Today we're going to talk about how do you pay the bills while you're trying to start your company. What strategies, and this is Joel, and this is Rocco, and I'm Mike. Joel, what strategies have you used to pay the bills while you're starting your company?
I think you got to leverage your skills. At the end of the day, you're always, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a consultant, it's all about leveraging your skills. I think a lot of times, many of us have done consulting, we've done other things that are within your wheelhouse. I think oftentimes the challenge is when you go out of that, get a job, right? Just to actually pay the bills and go out of your mission and what you really want to do in life. So I think that's the part where, as an entrepreneur, you always try to kind of balance that out. But the importance is just making sure that you're doing it within the area of focus and doing it in a way that is consistent with your mission.
Rocco, you've got 2 startups going. How do you pay the bills?
My wife pays the bills.
Or you can do that.
That's a valid answer.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's all I got.
All right. I've been going down the consulting path and doing a little bit of teaching as well. The catch is I end up spending a bunch of time paying the bills, and then I don't have as much time to put into to starting my own company. So I think it's like an ebb and a flow. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I put my head down and make a bunch of money, and then I got to lift my head up and spend some of that money on my own, on the time I can put into my own company.
I will say though, we did drastically reduce our bills.
Right.
Like we went from living in New York City with my tax rate, we cut our rent in half.
Yep.
When I left my other company, to ensure that if shit hits the fan, we're good.
Yeah.
And one salary will.
Well, I think that's also important, right? I think prior to kind of taking that leap, right? I didn't work for 3 years, right? And managed to figure something out. So
You worked hard for 3 years. I worked hard money in the bank.
Exactly, right? But
I did the same.
Even with that, I think a lot of it has to do with planning. And if you say, one of the things that I do every month, that I think, if it's of any help, is I write myself a check every month. And that's just like a mental mindset where I don't go back into that mode of saying like, oh my God, I didn't get any money this month, right? And I think a lot of it is like, I'm paying myself, right? And if I'm paying myself, one of the things that I would do if I was working for a company, it's no different than things that I would do and show up and be as productive working for myself. And I feel like even if it's like a mind trick, but it's really been helpful for me just saying like, hey, I have money coming in, I'm paying myself. Right. And I know now exactly what my runway is, so I need to operate within those budgets, and that's been helpful.
That's actually great. I hadn't really thought about that, but I do the same thing. I have an LLC for my business, so the consulting money comes in there, and then that entity pays my paycheck.
Yeah.
So I do the same thing. I have a paycheck coming in out of the money I put.
But I think there's something about just seeing like, hey, I got paid this month.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Where in the past, part of what kind of has prompted me to go out and get a consulting gig or go back into a job. Those are typically, it's almost like that mental muscle, right?
Yeah, right.
Where I've gone back to a point where none of the money that I did from those contracts are left, right? The only thing that I can remember from those times where I acted from a place of scarcity and went back and got a job because I wasn't getting a paycheck.
Right.
As really kind of, I look back on those times as a way of kind of pulling strength and saying, okay, I've been in this place before. If I go out and get a job, right, because the funding is not there, or any number of things that can go wrong with a startup, which they always will. But it's just kind of keeping that mental fitness and making sure that you have people around you that can help support you in that path.
So we got 2 people in this room cutting checks.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we got one guy not getting paid yet.
Well, your wife's cutting you a check.
We got to work out.
She's cutting your check. So I think like the least.
I got a little bit from both sides here.
So you started 2 companies.
Paycheck.
We each have one company. Well, no, you have 2. You have 2 and the consultant.
Yeah.
So I just have the one thing and the consultant.
You also have a paid.
Yeah, that's
So that's a company
on
unto
top a
itself.
little bit. Yes, I agree. Which has me rethinking this whole thing. I will also say to your point, if you are going to cut expenses, the time to do it is right now.
Yes.
Because like I've waited before, and like you end up spending a bunch of money that you didn't have to spend, and it actually takes a while to get good at cutting expenses. Because like you cut, and there's still a bunch of fat there that you can go back and cut.
And then you got to factor in coming to terms.
Yeah, mentally, it's a purity. Yeah, exactly.
The expenses. Then actually.
But you end up in a place where you're really happy. It's just a different kind of happy.
Like every time that I've gone into like it's usually cycles, right? You have cycles of entrepreneurship. I'm not sure if that's been the case for you guys, where you go out and you basically say, hey, I'm gonna launch this thing, and you go out. For me, it usually happens when I have this gut feeling, and I don't mean like an intuition. I mean like someone else is performing half-ass on my idea, and I'm just like so pissed, right? And that's usually been the trigger point that I've had in the past. My AR/VR company, same thing happened, right? I was just like, this crap. What I have is way better, but they're executing. And I think that's usually kind of like the kick in the butt that I need to get anything done. And I think for me, you know, both on the last company and then now, obviously the company that we have in the coaching space, was basically that. I realized that there was a lot of people that were not being served. So it came from this place of just generally knowing that I can add more value, and then figuring out what it's going to take for me to actually execute on that. And that usually kind of is enough to say, okay, maybe instead of waiting another 18 months, I can probably get it done in 6. So what would I need to do so that in those 6 months, I can build enough runway? And that's usually kind of those cycles as we go through. Obviously, the one cycle that you can't stop is age. So that's been a big factor for me.
I have not been able to stop that.
It's like, if you guys find out, let me know. But I feel like every time it's, we're old enough to know what we want to do or what we're doing, right, in our careers. But we're not that young where you can just try stuff out and say, hey,
especially with the wife and
the kids and that sort of stuff. But I feel like that's always, going back to your weekly mental approach of, how do you make sure that you manage your emotional state? Right. And it sounds easy to say. I mean, even in coaching,
it's hard, man.
It's probably the single most important thing. I have this thing that I do. It's called like my Monday morning strategy, where Monday mornings, even if it's Sunday night that I prepare for it, but having a plan where now it doesn't feel like you're in it by yourself. And as an entrepreneur, it can be a very lonely journey. So prepping up for Monday so that you can hit the week, with the right stride, and you have enough things lined up where you're not at your desk and like, okay, what am I going to do? Because that's the killer, right?
Yes.
But if you don't have a boss or a client or someone that tells you here's what needs to be done, those Monday mornings as an entrepreneur are gold. They can be led.
If you're not careful, your bunch of days go by and you have not moved.
Yeah. And then what happens is like later in the week is this whole remorse, I should have done this.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the stuff really comes from managing your state, understanding that, like I said, you as an entrepreneur, you're hiring yourself. And I think that's the single most important thing that I've learned. It took me 14 months of being at the wrong job, right, being miserable, to kind of get that learning. So if there's anything that I can leave you with today is, pay yourself, right? Pay yourself first, and make sure that you do it in a way that is physical, so that you know that you have a job to perform for yourself. And what that is, obviously, it's no different than you're working for, a Fortune 500 company or any type of consulting work that you do. You're not going to be just sitting around, right? Because if there's a value exchange there, you want to make sure that you can perform the right service, and what better way to do it than do it for yourself?
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thank you.